Corn futures jumping up by 30 points and soybeans as well. Here to comment on that is Jerry Gidel, as always from Chicago, Illinois, right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. Stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. So, Jerry, what happened here? 37 cents in one day.
Well, things are definitely moving around big time here. From there, the the interesting thing is we kind of stumbled in this week. We had lots of enthusiasm built from last week. We had the crop reports and we had other things going on, the weather and that, and we swooped up with on Monday, and then actually on Tuesday night we went just off the charts here. We'd never seen, we moved up 40 cents on the corn, and the beans were strong, and $16 and and that type of thing. And then after the kind of emotional 5 or 6 days we had, the markets took a little bit of a turnaround Tuesday, starting on at 5 o'clock on Tuesday morning, before we even saw the real U.S. trading session from there. And then we chopped around. We tried to bounce back a little Wednesday on things. And then Thursday, kind of a mixed bag attitude about the export sales this week. Don't know. I thought they were pretty solid in some ways here, from the point of view that we had a little less on old crop, but we had right up there new crop situations on corn and soybeans. And the one thing I think a lot of people in this thing kind of forgot, that the Chinese had bought some new crop corn and beans that showed up in this week's export sales. From there, wheat, the world of wheat right now is quite confused. It doesn't know if it's worry about what's going on in Russia, and that's the only thing it cares, or are we going to worry about the U.S. and the prospects there? We had a crop condition situation slip down on Monday pretty significantly on good next ratings there, of about 4% down to 49% on, and that comes from really two states, Oklahoma and Texas, that have missed the rains that have kind of popped up here this week, or even last week, coming across parts of Kansas and on into Missouri and Illinois and eastward from there. But today, we kind of limped into today's action. People have been concerned about the fact that the Chinese have made these big purchases on corn this year, and there's quite a little bit yet to be shipped in corn. We've got sales right up there to the USDA estimate right now, by the way. But people always want to see progress on shipping things after you buy it, and that, well, we did start to see that earlier this week, and that, but still a lot of things kind of running through the markets. In that big rumor showed up before the pause today that China was definitely going to be shipping this stuff, the corn that they purchased, and that even despite some recent talk about African swine fever hitting some northern areas of China and Inner Mongolia, which is a province inside of China these days, and that. But that started things off, and then as the day wore on, we had different reports out of South America about crop sizes, and that helps stir things up even more. And then once we get rolling, the May contract on corn goes right through 720, and here we are at some pretty impressive numbers. Now, let's keep people kind of coordinated here. The May contracts in the U.S. here on corn, soybeans, wheat, there's not many people participating in it. They're not really setting the market tone on cash prices here. They've all switched over to the July. That started even last week, even very early, in that, because of the fact that the prospects of any kind of delivery against the May contracts was very limited, and that so uh, basically the commercial interest in the U.S. and around the world says, I'm not going to deal with that contract. That's a it's going to be flying back and forth, and I'm going to move on to July and put my hedges there, or maybe even switch them all the way to September, and we'll see how this thing plays out. Because interesting, most people in the U.S. are not really paying attention to marketing things. They're so concentrated after not really getting in the fields here by the middle of April. They want to get out there and get their corn and soybeans in the ground, and that'll be a big number we'll look for on Monday.
Yes, I found a little tricky. One data was the USDA crush survey with 2% less of soybean crush and 0.2% less of soybean oil stocks.
Yeah, well, the comparison of last year's 192 million bushel against the trade's estimate of 188.3 or 4, depending on which one you look at in the survey results in that, is a little lower, but significantly higher. We didn't have this is the March number we're looking for, by the way. It's going to be released on Monday afternoon at their typical 3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central time, and so we're going to bounce back dramatically on that. We've still, in many cases here, have a little bit of a head start on this year's crush versus last year's crush. We got beat up. We were way ahead until we had this nasty February where the weather was so bad that these processing plants in both corn and ethanol, or excuse me, ethanol and soybeans, both slowed down during the month of February because the weather was tough on machinery and tough on people getting things accomplished. So everybody slowed down. Now we're bouncing back in March. April sometimes is another reasonably strong month. May's going to be a little interesting because everybody's scrambling out here to get a hold of supplies. But right now, at least, everybody's kind of watching to see how this crush does progress here after we get through this period here. Will the limited supplies in the U.S. bring down that number? You've heard people, there's been rumors and talk about substantial prices being offered above the futures market, in essence, positive basis, which normally is not that the case here in the U.S., and that for soybeans and corn. Well, this time of year isn't the easiest time to get producers to stop wanting to plant and deliver things. So that's the other feature in this thing that makes May a little tricky, and that. But one of the interesting things in here now, wow, they maybe get this thing tightened down a little bit here, and they won't be able to get enough beans to process in that this summer. And that, well, that means, ooh, man, I'm not going to get as much soybean oil. Soybean oil still has the whole veg oil world is still up in the air here, and that we've had multitudes of ideas flowing through this thing this week again. As we all know, India has not been dealt a very good hand here with this COVID situation, and that they've kind of skirted the thing earlier, last year and everything else, but man, they're getting socked right now. And unfortunately, for the veg oil market, they are a huge part of it. From the soybeans that they produce, the palm oil that they import. So people got kind of concerned about the reality of the fact that they might not buy as much or need as much in the veg oil world, with their health issues kind of skewed over to one side there and that kind of stuff. So there won't be, cooking with as much oils and things like that because of that. But here today, what happens? Bang, we go right back up in the soybeans, oil and other things, because of the fact that we just talked about the idea that maybe we won't have as much bean oil and things like that being processed in the U.S. because of lack of ability to supply it. And the case is that if you buy beans and corn right now, you've got it in a processing world. You got to make sure you can sell the products, and that's the other feature in this thing. We're getting things high enough that maybe they won't. But veg oil is one of those agricultural products that is highly inelastic. Inelastic means that I don't think I want to change my mind about what I use and that type of thing. And so, the price is up a little bit. I can't tell the difference. I'm just still going to use it. And that's really the interesting thing. We're dealing with an inelastic product here on soybean oil that actually came within a half a cent of its all-time high here earlier this week. And we backed off. Geez, I think we just say a quick figure on this thing. If you looked at July, I think we took off a whole 10 cents, but bang, we're right back up here, challenging the highs here on this close on Friday, and it's still going to be a very, it's a driving force in the soybean processing world out there. And so I guess I'm not anticipating as big a pullback on things from there, because I do think that the latest stocks reports kind of tell us that there's a little more beans in people's pockets than there was earlier in the year. It looks like that last year's crop was underestimated, and so but we're not going to be able to expect another 100 million on soybean crush or anything like that. It's going to be at the number of maybe 10 or 15 million above that number. And it's going to be a tight world out here yet. It's not going to be easy to navigate some of these processing opportunities in both corn and, primarily beans. And then corn's the same thing, ethanol. Tricky world out there. Everybody's optimistic we're going to be driving like gangbusters here in the U.S., but I'm not sure how fast we're all going to run to the office.
Yes, and how do you see the impact of currency appreciation in emerging countries like Brazil?
Well, the currency issues in that have, as we know, has beat up both Argentina and Brazil, primarily because of the issues of some of the COVID things that have started to say, well, their values are, to some extent, that's helpful when you're selling your products, and that's part of the reason why you got more dollars in your pocket because of the value of the real, and that's down. But on the other side of the coin, that's really a big factor in the wheat markets, and it's probably going to be a big factor in the soybean markets and corn, where the U.S. dollar strength kind of puts us out of the opportunity to be competitive on purchasing things. The one tricky thing that happens is that between now and fall, in essence, if you're looking for supplies and around the world, you usually can find it here in the U.S. You might have to pay more than you want, but it sometimes happens. So that's the tricky part of this whole thing. Even if the dollar is maybe made our prices higher than our competitors in wheat, corn, and soybeans, the one thing that's really has made a big change here in the last 10 days or so, and it really affects, and the other big product that's going on in here, that's corn, is that attitudes about the size of Brazil's safrinha crop has changed dramatically. And one of that came about by one of the old line Brazilian consultants down there, Sassafras Mercado. Their adjustment today from 112 million metric tons down to 104 and 8. That's an amazing number, the adjustment in one swell swoop. And that's really coming because of the fact that Southern Mato Grosso, Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraná, Porto Goiás, Minas Gerais hasn't had much rain in the last month. And this is the time that makes or breaks between here and through the first parts of May. And this year particularly, this is the productive side of corn at this point. We've got some delayed planting, so if this is an early shutdown to the season and the dry season comes on earlier than normal, that's not good for Brazil's output. So that's the other reason why this market had very good strength today and flurried, finished with a flurry. I'll get that out yet from a standpoint of a Friday afternoon kind of a price here in the world. Having that adjustment was quite a factor to keep boosting things.
Are you seeing new limits getting reached?
Well, it's interesting is that the when the numbers that people were looking at here in the July, because at this point there is no limits, by the way, on the spot. In essence, the May corn, May soybeans, May wheat, because it's in delivery, there is no limits. But going back to the Julys here, the corn limit was 25 cents. It stayed at limit today. That automatically goes to 40 cents. Now, it's going to be tricky is the fact that over this weekend, on the 1st of May every year, the Chicago Board of Trade / version of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange adjusts their limits. And in this case, because of the volatility we've had this year and that they are moving their normal limits from 25 cents to 40 cents. So we're already going to go to 40 cents because we were at limit. So I don't know if that then ends up moving the 40 cents to 60 cents. I have to say I never got that question answered before we got on today, and it's important. Hopefully Mike will have some updates for us on Monday on that, because it's an interesting question. Same thing on beans. There was a 70-cent limit previously on beans, and I think there's a limit of $1 now. Now we're not getting any automatic update. There was not anything like that in beans today. And interestingly enough, the wheat number that I've seen is staying at 40 cents. Now there's interesting twists in all this thing, because having corn and wheat both be in the same limit can cause issues later on. So there might be some adjustment in that wheat number if there's going to be a expanded or higher limits in the coming year for corn. So lots of things changing here, lots of price limits. And also don't forget, they've also authorized larger positions for individual funds and speculators and things like that. And so that's also coming into play here starting next week. So the wild and woolly world of commodities is probably not going to get any less wild and woolly.
All right, that's a lot to think about. Thank you,
Oh,
Jerry.
definitely. My head's spinning myself. Definitely, Lewis. It's going to be, and interestingly enough, after we hit the 720 we had this week, there was a lot of people saying it's in all over. The one last thing I'll throw into this thing is that I don't do all my research. I keep an eye on other people that do good stuff. And some people made some analysis here to say, when does the highs on corn and soybeans typically happen in the U.S.? And their analysis since 1973, a good year to start right after the Great Grain Robbery, and that June is the month. So, wow, that's a long ways from here.
Yeah.
We've got another at least 5 or 6 weeks for that particular scenario. And I think it does tie into the logic that the world is not going to feel much better about these supplies of corn and soybeans until we get the U.S. crop in the ground and we've got a little rain in the tank here in the U.S. That's still highly important for the second half of the year supplies, is how the U.S. crop comes in. And right now, at least, there's still some uncertainty, lots of dry weather up in the Dakotas and parts of West Texas, and even Iowa is not in great shape out there either. So we got lots of things to talk about. We'll have something to talk about again next week.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Take care.